Humans are like radio frequency, always try to connect with the right frequency. RF systems are one of the most important part of the satellites. And to tune us to the right frequency regarding the RF system, we have with us Mr. M. Sonada sir.
Sir obtained his BA from Mysore University and MTech with specialization in microwave engineering from IIT BHU Varanasi. He has been a part of ISRO for over 33 years. His expertise lies in satellite and ground station communication system requirements, system configuration, and system design specs. During his tenure, he held positions as project manager, deputy project director for various remote sensing and communication satellite at ISAC. He was Associate Director for Frequency Management at ISRO headquarters. He has efficiently handled frequency allocation and frequency coordination requirement with other space agencies for various Indian space projects. Mr. Manohar Sunada is a recipient of IETE Lalsi Varman Award for his outstanding contribution to reliability and quality assurance of spacecraft communication system. Sir is here to talk about RF system for housekeeping and payload data. So let's welcome him with a huge round of applause.
So I'll be talking on the communication systems and briefly introduce even the telemetry telecommand systems also. Okay. See, spacecrafts are launched for many purposes like communication, Earth observation, navigation, space research, and even environmental monitoring. Everything is all done to ensure safety and prosperity of life on land, sea, and then space. Okay. As you yesterday probably you would have seen that the spacecraft are launched into different orbits depending on the application. So they are launched even in the low Earth orbit, maybe some 200 to 1,000 kilometers, and then medium orbit it goes up to 20,000 kilometers, and geosynchronous orbit 36,000 kilometers for all communication systems. These communication systems which are in the geostationary orbit of 36,000 kilometers cannot cover land mass which is beyond 65 to 70-degree latitude because the inclination becomes very low or almost it is grazing. That's why for all the land masses which are beyond that latitude, they use very highly elliptical orbit called Molniya orbit or Tendra orbit, whose orbital period will be around 12 hours or 24 hours, so that it stays longer duration over that period and they do the communication. That's how the higher latitude land masses are communicated. Okay, the spacecraft is actually an ensemble of several subsystems. So yesterday you would have already seen the power system, AOC, and then propulsion also is over, and the mechanism is already covered. Today I will be covering the telemetry, telecommand, and the communication systems for both the TTC purpose and for the payload purpose. See, telemetry system actually what happens, it collects the health data of all the subsystems from different subsystems, and then it formats, and after that it sends it to the communication system for transmission to ground. So generally what happens, the processor is all formatted and it is sampled at 128 milliseconds. It is a typical things. Each parameter for different subsystems are sampled at 128 milliseconds, and then they are all formatted, then put in the 128 word format, and then it will be transmitted. Actually, in the format, what happens? The first it will have a frame sync code and the satellite ID, and after that data will come, and later some parity bits and all will be put for proper transmission and then BER purpose. So usually it is formatted in many ways. Either only real-time telemetry will be transmitted, or sometimes because it's an orbiting spacecraft, it goes into non-visibility region where the telemetry data is stored, and then when it comes in for the visibility region, it will be transmitted back. That's called the stored data. So either real time or real time plus store data, or totally payload data also will come during the visibility time. So whenever it is not visible, it will be stored and it will be sent. So this is a block schematic what I told. So it collects the data from all different subsystems like AOC, power, thermal, payload, RF, and then it processes, formats, and then it is encoded, and then it will be sent to RF section or transmission for modulation and then downlinking. So typical telemetry specification, as I told, the frame length will be some 128 words, and then number of bits per word is some 8, and then sampling rate is 4, and then bit rate is some 10 kilobits. Depending on the spacecraft and the application, the bit rate can vary from 1 kilobit to 10 kilobit, like that. And then usually conventional coding is done. There are many coding systems are there, conventional coding or something like that. And then usually this is made standard compatible with CCSDS, so that you can take ground station support all over the globe. There are so many ground stations. If you want, you can take support of them. Otherwise, if you have your own format, then it becomes specific, and your ground station has to be port or something like that. Sometimes what happens, even if this compatibility is not there, you may have to take your systems to those ground stations for downlinking and then reception. Similarly, the telecommand. See what happens, the spacecraft operations are all done by sending commands or uplinking from ground. The uplinked signal will be received by the command receiver on board, and then it demodulates, and after that it goes to the processing, and then that FSK whatever is there, or depending on the modulation, FSK or ESK or something like that, and then it will be taken to further processing. Usually the whole thing is processed in either one of the microcontroller or something like that. Some contingency commands or some specific things are separately processed and then kept, just to avoid in case of any problem of the microprocessor hang up or something like that. So these contingency commands at least will be taken care. So this is the simple block diagram of telecommand system. This is where the receiver is there, the uplink, and after that it goes into the filter. This is one of the typical things where the FSK modulation is there, the FS filter is there, then demodulation, and then decoding, and then it goes to the microcontroller for further processing. The contingency commands are separately processed, and then it goes to the systems. And this microcontroller, after all that, then these commands will get distributed to different subsystems like RF. It's only one thing is shown, RF and transmitter on off, but otherwise it will go to, it identifies to different subsystems, and wherever it is supposed to go, it will go. It gets distributed after that. So this is how the typical specifications are there. Data rate is 100 bits per second. Now spacecrafts are having higher bit rate also. If it is an orbiting satellite and a low Earth orbit satellite, sometimes it is only 100 kilobits, and many of these geosynchronous satellites are having 1 kilobit also. Then modulation, since it is an FSK, there is a subcarrier for ones and zeros, 3.125 and 5.55, frame length, command information, and parity bits are included separately, and the frame duration is around 630 milliseconds. Now coming to communication subsystems, what happens, all the telemetry, telecom and everything is told, all other subsystems are there. Finally the whole data has to come to ground, or it has to go to spacecraft. That's where this communication system plays a vital role. So it's a link between satellite and the ground station. All commands and then telemetry, everything will be taught. The overall, when you say communication systems, it is not just the spacecraft alone. The total space operations, when you talk, it includes two parts. One is there on the space, another is there on the ground. That's what we call it as a space segment and a ground segment. And the communication system generally comprises of receiver, transmitter, and antenna system. And after that, the demodulated things will go for further processing in the digital domain. So this is what are the entries into the communication link, the transmitter, and then path loss, and then similarly the losses, the gain, noise is included, and the design margins to guarantee certain operations, reliability. See, the configuration of these communication systems in any spacecraft depends on several parameters or several this one, orbit. What is the orbit? What is the frequency and the bandwidth available? And what is the power available? What is the data rate? And what margins you want? And what kind of a ground station capability is there? Whether one ground station or a network of ground stations. Depending on all that, you have to configure the communication system. See, usually what happens when we are talking about nanosatellites, all these nanosatellites are small satellites, most of them are launched into the low Earth orbits in the altitude of some 400,000 kilometers, 200, 250 and all are there. So here what happens, because of the low Earth orbit, their orbital duration is only maximum some 100 minutes or something it will come. And due to 100 minutes operations, the visibility over any ground station is limited. It will be around 12 to 15 minutes or not more than that. And the command system and the telemetry system have to be configured such that within this time duration, whatever commands need to be uplinked has to be sent. And similarly, whatever telemetry downlink, real time anyway it will come. If the stored data is there, the stored data also has to be downlinked within that duration. If it is not possible, then we may have to have a network of ground stations to increase or the continuity or connection between the spacecraft and the ground station. They call it as contact time. So that needs a lot of planning, and then a lot of ground station had to be done. That's how the communication has to be configured. So usually what happens now slowly even optical communication is coming, but of late, till now, all the spacecraft communications are in the RF domain only, radio spectrum. So this is how the radio spectrum is there, and up to 300 gigahertz we call it as radio spectrum, and beyond that they're all optical things. But most of our satellite communications are in the 30 megahertz to 40 gigahertz band. Okay, now coming to the configuration. Suppose if you take it for a TTC transponder, TTC is nothing but for telemetry, telecommand, and the tracking purpose, ranging purpose. If you see the configuration, usually I have put the UHF, VHF. There are different frequencies, UHF, VHF frequency also. I'll talk on how the frequency selection is done and what is the criteria for that. So in the typical thing, whether it is any frequency, the configuration will be like this. You have an antenna, and then you have an LNA, and after that it goes into the down conversion, and once it down conversion, the whole thing is after down conversion it will come to an IF band, and then demodulation takes place. Then it goes into the digital domain, and it goes to OBC, that onboard computer, or AOC or ADCS, whatever is that. And similarly, the telemetry, whatever spacecraft data is there from OBC, it will come to transmitter, then it will get modulated, and then it is up converted to the required frequency, and then it will be amplified and sent to the antenna so that it will be downlink. See, this is a normal transponder. There are coherent transponder. Actually, coherent transponder means what happens, the uplink and the downlink are related in a particular ratio. Okay, it is useful for getting the two-way range data and range rate data. But for all small spacecrafts, we are not doing any RF ranging. Most of the things are getting the information from GPS, and then its attitude and orbit and range is carried out. But however, some spacecrafts are using these coherent transponders where actually there is a mistake. This yellow is not between filters; it is on the receiver and the transmitter. Okay, this common yellow is used for deriving the downlink frequency, and the uplink frequency is also locked to this yellow, and then you get a coherent this one. So generally there is a 240 by 220 kind of ratio for X band, and for X band it is 4 times that. So one more thing, here we have put one main antenna and null-filling antenna. Generally what happens, especially for TTC purpose, the data For data downlink, the spacecraft is already controlled and it is looking at the ground station, so there is no problem. Whereas for TTC, including the contingency operations or including the contingency cases of the spacecraft may be tumbling or it may lose its lock. When such a case also, we should be able to have a contact with the spacecraft from the ground station. That's why it is an omnidirectional antenna is used, so that whatever is the spacecraft direction, we should be able to contact. So that's why one main antenna will be there, which is there. Usually, if you see the antenna radiates in only in the forward direction, and backside it will be lobe. So that backside, whatever that null zone is there, there is one null filling antenna is put so that it will cover on the other side. So that's how this main antenna and null filling antenna together it forms a omni coverage, near omni coverage. So as far as data transmitter is concerned, generally one carrier generator will be there, whatever it is, whether it is X band or S band. Even there are Ku, Ka band transmitters also. So there is a carrier generator, and after that it will go to a modulator, to which the payload data will come, and after that it amplifies, goes for amplification and then downlink. And there will sometimes what happens on during ground testing, if you want to do the measurement, you will have a coupler and the monitoring port will be taken. So this is what I was telling. The transponder can be coherent or non-coherent. Usually the linear inverting transponders are preferred, so that the Doppler effect will be reduced. And then receiver may be conventional hardware, or nowadays what is happening, the software things are coming, the SDR, software defined radio. Transmitters, again, that it can be an oscillator and a multiplier, and or a dielectric resonator, where it straight away generates the carrier frequency. In the first one, what happens, you have a low frequency oscillator, then it will be multiplied to bring it to the downlink frequency, whereas in dielectric oscillator it is straight away that is generated. And frequency synthesizers are there, where you generate frequency using synthesizers. See, these small satellites and all, because it has to be realized very fast and you don't have much of a time even for frequency coordination, selection, finalization. That's why usually generally what happens, these software defined radios are preferred, because it has a flexibility of changing anytime. If there is a problem, you can change the frequency, you can change the modulation scheme, you can change the coding. So that's why these SDRs are used. And similarly on the transmitter side, the frequency synthesizing is preferred, so that you can always change. Even you can change after launching also, you can uplink the data and then change it. Another thing is what happening, see now already frequencies are crowded, so many satellites are there. Frequency getting clearance also will be difficult. So that's why the SDR is used. Another thing what happens nowadays, the SDR, what happens, you have to program. There are cognitive receivers, they are all intelligent receivers. In fact, they are monitoring on their own. They monitor which frequency is free, which frequency is used. Then on its own, it frequency allocates. It uses the frequency which is not used, and then does that. They are all that cognitive radios are now it has become popular. They are all intelligent radios. So that's what I was telling. The frequency bandwidth are all limited. The non-commercial frequencies, as I told, there are so many frequencies. There are certain commercial frequencies, and some amateur frequency bands are there, and similarly ISM bands are there. But all these nano satellites or small satellites, if you really want to have frequency because of already occupied or something like that, you need to go for frequency coordination. That is a very complicated process, and it takes time consuming. You have to put a publication, then many people will object, you have to coordinate with them, get clearance. It takes a lot of time. So that's why usually all these small satellites, nano satellites and all are using these amateur bands. Amateur band doesn't need any licensing or coordination. But but there is one catch. If you are using amateur band, you have to put a payload or something like that for public use. The public also should be able to access your spacecraft. That's why, okay, amateur band if you use, you have the ease of using the frequency without coordination, but you have to make it accessible to the public. So if you want to use for commercial, then you have to go through all that frequency coordination. Usually all these TTCs, generally TTCs are used in UHF and VHF band, mainly because many of these systems are readily available, commercially available, and then throughout the globe there are so many ground stations, you can have a network. If you go for higher frequency like Ku band or X band, the limited ground stations, accessibility may be less, so you will not be able to do that. That's why even now, though frequencies are available, many people are still sticking to UHF and VHF bands, and payloads are done in S and X band. Although Ku band payloads have been tried, but they're all in experimental stage or still to be proved. There is no heritage. So these are all the amateur frequency bands. There are so many things, and how much, what is the frequency band available, what is the uh, actually the whole world is divided into three regions: region 1, region 2, region 3. From frequency point of view, what all frequencies are available in which regions, and what are the applications you can use it, it's given. And this frequency coordination requirement, that's what I told. For educational and amateur radio, amateur this one, no coordination required. And similarly for experimental and research, if you want, there is no coordination required. But if you use a commercial frequency, then for any purpose, not only that, even if you are using it for research purpose or amateur satellite purpose, if you are using a commercial frequency, then it has to go through the coordination process. But whatever frequency you use, you need to have a publication and you have to inform. There is no coordination requirement if you use for amateur, but commercial it is. This anyway I have already shown in that drawing. So this is the frequency coordination steps I showed. Whatever frequency you want to use, you have to do a advanced publication, and after the publication, people will start objecting or contacting you. Then you need to do coordination, and after coordinations, once it is allotted, it has to be notified, and then it will be published in the MIFR, that is Master International Frequency Register. And the whole process of this coordination and getting it allotted takes 3 to 6 years. That's why I told it is very cumbersome and time consuming, and for a short duration nano satellite type of projects, programs, generally they don't go for commercial frequencies. And then coming to modulation, what kind of a modulation to be used? Again, it all depends on the bandwidth available, the burp performance you are looking for, and then out of band emissions, and you should not interfere with the adjacent satellites or adjacent channels, and also on the complexity which results when you use a different modulation scheme. As the spacecrafts, the resources are limited and the spectrum also is limited, you need to use a very highly spectrum efficient and then power efficient modulation schemes with a better channel coding and then error correction. And usually constant envelope modulation schemes are preferred because you can use even the saturated amplifiers for amplifying, so that you can get maximum power out of it. Otherwise you have to be in the linear region, and then you will not be able to take full power out of power amplifiers. And this is how the modulation looks. You see the power efficiency, and then modulation, and see how many bits per hertz and all. And depending on what the burp performance you are looking for, that what should be the bandwidth efficiency and how much bandwidth that occupies, all those things you can have comparison and then decide based on your requirement and the resources. Especially for payload purposes, usually people are going for QPSK and all, so that it gives better bandwidth efficiency, and you can go up to some 1 megabits per second rate. So that's what I said. Especially still, UHF bands only are used because commercially these systems are readily available. They are all readily available on a single PCB, transceiver type or transmitter and receiver together. They are available, and they can go up to the 120 kilobits per second data rate. And then if you want to really go for higher frequency like S band and all, again the coordination problem and the availability of ground station, all those things you have to look into that. So many systems are available. Local oscillator signals, receiver transmitters are together a PLL chip, one board kind of a thing are available. So this is the typical specifications for VHF and receiver. Frequency band is some 140 to 148, and the sensitivity is up to 115. Similarly, transmitters usually UHF and UHF 450 megahertz, and then up to 1 watt output is available. And the processing, the modulation, the FSK, ASK, and all are used. This is one of the typical UHF, UHF transmitters, transceiver specifications which are commercially available, readily available. There are many suppliers in the world. See, this payload data transmitters actually, because you have a payload and the generated data is more, and then you need to send more data within the visible time. So if you go for higher frequency, it's always higher bandwidth is available to you, like S, X, even KU, KA transmitters are available, and up to 1 watt of power is there. I already said the QPSK, generally QPSK modulation is used. There have been a study that the different codings also. The turbo coded OFDM modulation scheme gives a better BR. That is much better compared to these things. But it has a lot of complications in the realization and other things. That's why still people are using QPSK, BPSK type. Even GMSK also can be used. This is the specifications of S band. Usually the 2.2 to 2.5, 1 watt of power, BPSK or QPSK up to 1 Mbps data rate, and sometimes it is programmable. What happens if there is any reduction in the power, or if you have not much of a power, the margin is less, then you can reduce the data rate so that you will get the required EB band. So these are some of the systems which are available. This is the transceiver, S band, that SDR, what I said. So this is actually programmable on its own. From 70 megahertz to 6 gigahertz, you can use it. Whatever frequency you want, whatever modulation scheme you want, whatever bar requirement you want, and all those, even power output up to 1 watt, from 100 milliwatt to 1 watt, you can program and then use it. You have to program and then use it. And after launch also, if something is required, you can upload the changes and then use it. See, even the X band SINGs and K band horn systems are available. They have been launched, but they have not been launched on nano satellite of 10 kgs. They have already come to 20-25 kg satellite. They have launched. The heritage is available, and things are going on to improve it. And the satellite antenna wise, antenna system has one transmit antenna and the receiver antenna, and a diplexer for coupling both of them. I already told, usually we are using omni coverage for TTC purpose, and high gain or directional antenna for payload purpose, because payload operations are done only when it is totally stabilized and it is always looking at the ground station. So these are the things. The monopole antenna, the UHF, VHF, and other things. So they can be uh, hard rods, or they are all tape, wound tape and then deployable. Even deployable helical antennas are there. A combination monopole, dipole, hybrid antenna configurations are used. And these are all the payload antennas. Usually S or X band payload antennas are patched, and even some reflector antennas are also have been used. So ground station, as I said, generally we are using UHF VHF band. So of course there is one totally ground station presentation in the afternoon. I'll just tell few things and then skip. It's a detailed presentation will be coming in the afternoon. Ground station antenna configuration is, you have a transmit antenna, your receive antenna, and they're all whether it is from transmitter or receiver, it will coming trans receiver, and then there will be a station computer for scheduling passes and other thing, and there is an antenna controller for tracking purpose. I I'll skip now because there is a presentation totally on that. So this will be a payload ground session. So generally UHF VHF antennas are used for payload. Some reflector antennas are used. This is how the VHF antennas are looking. It's a normal linear Yagi antennas are used. Sometimes if you want a circular polarization, two Yagi antennas are combined in the proper phase, and then realize circular polarization. So these reflector antennas are used for all S and X band for downlink, and UHF and S band, if they are together, both antennas are put on a single tracking system and used. This is how it looks. I'll just, anyway, further things he will tell, I'll leave it. Now coming to link budget, actually what happens, link analysis or budgeting is to quantify the total space operation performance. So it is in terms of BR only it is told. Whatever BR you want, for that BR, what SNR or what SNR or EB you required, only you will have to decide. So it's a balance between all path gains you have to take, losses you have to take, and then you have to calculate your EB by naught for a given bar. And there is a theoretical EB by naught, and there is a calculated EB by naught, and the difference between the two is called margin. So what happens for a reliable operation, you need at least 3 dB margin for TTC purpose and 6 dB margin for payload purpose. And these are all the parameters involved in that. You have latitude, longitude, frequency, transmit power, path loss, other things. And this is what is the link equation. If you are working on carrier level, CNR level, that is the link equation for CBNR. And if you are coming to the digital portion, EB by naught will be given by that. And finally, this is how it looks, EB by naught and the carrier, how your EB by naught improves with the increasing CNR. So finally, the available or existing from the system, whatever is available EB by naught minus the required EB by naught will be the margin. And this is typical link for a ground session. So in this case, you see you have some 13 dB margin for uplink. And some 5 dB margin for a downlink, because downlink margin is because the onboard is resource limited, the transmit power may not be much, so that's why your margin will be less. But 3 dB is a required margin for reliable operation, which is sufficient. So now what is happening actually? Now the demand for nanosatellites is increasing, and a lot of missions are also are being planned. You know, because of improvement in the fabrication technology, there are so many systems are available having better capability, better resolution cameras are available, and better storage systems are available. But the only thing is, if you put all of them onto the spacecraft, the data rate requirement, downlink data rate requirement becomes so high that you are not able to put in the RF spectrum, because the limited bandwidth, you are not able to do that. So that's why what happened, people are going for optical band, where your bandwidth is more, you can increase the data rate. The even the first optical thing they tried in Japan in 2015. They used LED, three high power LEDs, and then transmitted and shown. And even NASA in 2018, along with aerospace, uh, that AeroCube 7A and 7B, they are launched from ISS, and they proved data optical communication between two satellites, and also between satellite and ground up to 100 megabits. They used 1064 nanometer laser. So this is what I said. The first attempt was done in 2012 in Japan. They used LED, green LEDs for operation, and the 7B, 7C they used for the 100 megabits operation. Actually, the free space optical communication is identified as having very potential for future. And some groups are working even on what is called as this asymmetric laser communication. What is happening? Uh, they will not have any laser transmitter from on spacecraft. They will have only on ground. So that the limited resources, they don't want to do that. It is something like passive. They transmit from ground and get the reflected signal, which is modulated. They call it as modulating reflectors are being used. Some experiments are going on. Some things are already tried. So on the whole, still the laser communication is still nascent. So coming to end, the recapitulation, still usually people are using UHF, VHF band only, and S and X band for data transmitters. Amateur frequency bands only are used. Commercial frequency bands are again for coordination requirement, they are not used. Antennas are still again monopole, and the FSK, ASK only are used there. Though there are many better modulation schemes are there, because of complications still ASK, FSK, BPSK, QPSK only are used. Some places the GMSK also they have tried, but as I told, the turbo coded OFDM is the best modulation scheme, and the Yagi antennas are used for ground. And finally, the higher RF frequencies and laser communication systems on nanosats have limited heritage and still yet to be demonstrated. But laser communication has a very good potential. It is coming up, but it takes some more time. Otherwise, I am completing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to call Sanjay K. Sharma, sir, to facilitate our speaker with a memento.